Welcome to the Mojo Market Report. Here's your hosts, Dave Sturchio and Chris Gueci.
What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Mojo Market Report here on a Wednesday, another rainy Wednesday in the tri-state area. One day, it will stop raining. One day, but not today. So don't worry about that. Bring your umbrellas. Do you even own an umbrella?
No.
I don't either.
Come
So I don't even know why I even
Dave,
said that.
I
I just
have a
go out there and
hoodie.
I do the turtleneck. I'm like, that's going to help, take the
It's
rain
always
away.
hoodie season over here, so I do not need the umbrella.
Ah, yes, the hoodie season. Anyway, we hope you guys are doing well. We hope you guys have enjoyed the content. Mojo is putting out an astronomical amount of content over on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter. Their tweets are just phenomenal. I've actually found one today that I'm very excited about. I don't know why I missed it, how I missed it. I usually get the little alerts when they're tweeting. When Bailey Zappi came in, I know you won the game. Who cares? But when Bailey Zappi came in, they put out a tweet. He goes, third string quarterback coming in for a grouchy coach. And it was Willie Beeman. And I was like, oh my God, I missed the boat on that. I was very excited to see that one. I'm a big.
Shout out to Belichick inserting the generic quarterback Madden template at any given moment, and it just works somehow. I know they lost, but still.
It is what it
Bailey
is.
Zappi.
Today on the show, we'll be able to do a little retro Boomin. And when I say that, Mojo has given us a fantastic platform to find out all about the guys and the stars of old and the guys that are already retired, all the way back to 2000, we got to dig deep. So believe it or not, I know that sounds ridiculous when you say that. It makes me feel like a fossil, but it's like we went all the way back to 2000, and it's like 2000 was like yesterday. But it was actually 22 years ago.
Yeah, that's like the beginning of Tom Brady's career. So it was the
I see what you did there.
beginning of time.
See what you
at
did
the
there,
dawn of
Mojo.
time.
I see what you did there.
Yep.
Tom Brady love. I get it. Yeah, listen, he's the GOAT. But in this regard, the first person I looked up was Tony Romo, and I was like, oh, let's see what he did. It's fantastic to see some of these guys that obviously come into the league. Tony Romo, undrafted, free agent, comes into Dallas, doesn't do nothing, literally zip for the first 2 years of his career. Then he gets the call up, throws his first pass, intercepted by the Giants. I remember where I was. Right? So if that's any indication of where Romo or Pickett can go with his career.
Peyton Manning set at one time rookie record for picks in a season, and we know what Peyton Manning did. So
yeah, he might have.
It's too early to.
He might have
jump
did a
the
couple
ship
things
on
in
a
the
pick
league
for a rookie quarterback.
Right. So speaking of quarterbacks, that's where we dove first. We had to say, all right, when you think of quarterbacks and you think of Peyton Manning, you think of guys like his brother Eli, right? Like that class was forever linked. Forever linked forever.
With each other, of course.
Yes.
They're linked to each other.
And it's Phillip Rivers, it's Eli Manning, and it's Ben Roethlisberger. So we decided to take that class from 2004 and compare them to three guys that were taken in the first round of the 2018 draft. Now remember, we all remember what happened in 2004. Technically, Eli Manning was the number one overall pick, right? We all know what happened. The rest is history. He calls his dad. He's like, I don't want to play here, and he gets traded. So then Rivers and him swap. Yeah, well, look, it played out. It played out well for him. But we did look into them, and we compared them to 2018. In 2018, we got Baker Mayfield, number one overall pick, Josh Allen, and of course the 32nd pick in the first round, Lamar Jackson. So we'll do a little comparison between the guys just to give you an idea as to how the Mojo formulas and everything works based off career accolades, stats, just contracts, everything that factors into a Mojo market price. We figured it out. Well, they figured it out based off of their awesome spreadsheet that I got to dive into yesterday. So when you take a look at the quarterback class of 2004, you look at their final banked value, right? And what we're seeing here is that Big Ben retired. I do air quotes. You don't see me right this second, but air quotes, Big Ben retired because I think he's done, right? Like it's pretty much done.
Big Ben's done.
All right, good. So he's done. And of course, he finishes in the 100 club, the pristine 100 club of Mojo. Coming right short of that 100 club is Phillip Rivers at $96.47. And believe it or not, Eli Manning with the lowest, $86.38. Now I'm thinking to myself, why? Why would that possibly happen? The guy won 2 Super Bowls. Why on earth is Eli Manning the lesser of the three that, and he was the highest draft pick? And maybe that's why. Because he was drafted first. Expectations are set a little higher, even though it was only like a 4 or 5 pick separation between him and Rivers. And then, I think it was 11th or 12th for Ben Roethlisberger. maybe that has something to do with it. But then you look at the overall statistics and the overall historics, and
it's
Eli Manning,
a different story.
Eli Manning leads in one category only, and that's interceptions. So,
and not only
now we
does
know
he
why.
not lead in any of the other categories, I feel like he's being lapped in some of them as well. You know, touchdown passes, Eli 366, Big Ben 418, Phillip Rivers 421. Yeah, across the board wins. Eli's got 100. He's 500.
He's 500 quarterback, right?
The other two have exceptionally higher amount of wins, and I think Eli was a product of his environment in terms of his Super Bowl wins. I'm not knocking Eli, but that was a defensive-driven team in those days.
Yeah,
and
oh,
when it comes
it's not
down
close.
to how the Mojo evaluates and sets this banked value, it comes down to it's pretty cut and dried. So there is no. They were all 3 top 10 picks. I think Phillip Rivers was 5th and Big Ben was actually 11, so not top 10. So
well, whatever.
I don't know that
Early.
their entry value, because I was having a hard time. I do have to get a little bit better at navigating. That thing is a beast.
When I tell
Very
you,
powerful tool.
My computer almost exploded. It's like, oh, would you like to compute all this data? Sure would. And you're like, hold on to your butts.
Very cool
'Cause
to
there's
look
a lot.
at, but it was
100%.
like information overload for me. I cannot wait to do a deeper dive because there's more than just the top dogs that we're talking about. I want to look at career arcs of Rich Gannon. I mean, that might be a little bit hard because he's pre-2000.
Yeah,
but I know that we have the other.
Yeah, we got plenty of stuff to look
So
into.
I want to look at some older quarterbacks that maybe weren't Hall of Fame bound, so we could see not everyone's going to make the Hall of Fame.
Well,
we look at first-round quarterbacks that don't make it in the class we're about to talk about in 2018.
Right.
There's 2 that we're not even going to discuss.
Who's that?
Josh Rosen. And
Well, Josh
there's
Rosen
one
is
more.
practically out of the league right now. He's sitting there behind Jacoby Brissett.
There is 5 first
And I think
round,
there might even be another guy
There was 5 first
over
round
him.
picks in that year at quarterback. I know. It's
Sam
escaping
Darnold.
me. Sam Darnold is the other one.
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, listen, I'm there for you, bro.
Got
So we look at this 2004 class, and they're legends in our own mind. Obviously, Rivers doesn't finish with a ring, so he doesn't get the Super Bowl bonus. But Big Ben and Eli do, and Eli still last, right? So it's interesting to see how this played out for his entire career because longevity is definitely a thing of his. 236 games played, and he started about 220 of them before legendary quarterback Geno Smith took over and broke that streak. Sorry to all you Giants fans. I know it's still got to burn. But look, it is what it is. Now, when you look at the 2018 class, in comparison, we were just talking about a couple guys we weren't talking about that were not on those lists. But Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall pick, right? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Now, when you take a look at their current value right now, leading this pack, rightfully so, is Josh Allen, right? But there's a little discrepancy here between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson because I have some numbers here that'll kind of blow you away as far as the bank value of what these guys can project at because of the fact that they're on pace for some crazy, crazy things. Baker Mayfield, though, that's the interesting one. Number 1 overall pick in the 2018 draft, and it just seems like nobody is going to his birthday parties, and it's just a bad situation for Baker Mayfield. And how funny is that that's a Cleveland thing? Bo Callahan was a Cleveland quarterback, or it was supposed to be a Cleveland quarterback. And if you don't know what I'm talking about the movie Draft Day. So omit that from your memory. And of course, like I said, Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall pick. He's on out of the 3 of these guys. He's already on his second team. He hasn't received the big payday yet. So it's like, what are your expectations, Chris, for a Baker Mayfield going forward?
I talked about Baker a little bit yesterday when we were talking about DJ Moore. I don't think Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback, and on the other side of that coin is if he's not a good enough quarterback to start, I also don't know how receptive his teammates are to him in the locker room. So if your plan is to be a backup quarterback, which I'm sure it's not his plan, I just don't think Baker Mayfield has staying power in the league. And if I'm looking at his market projections, I think the market agrees with me. I mean, it could be a buy low situation if you think Baker could fix things, but it's not like the Panthers don't have weapons and he's still not able to get it done. I don't think Baker's the guy. You probably had Lamar Jackson sitting there on draft day in the green room. Like, they just took Baker Mayfield first. Are they kidding me?
He did the Tom Brady. You're going with that effing guy? Like that's
Unreal.
That's what you did. And Lamar slips all the way to the back end of the first round. I believe the Ravens traded back up to get him at 32. So they realized, like, all right, wait, hold on. Nobody's taking this guy. Let's take him. Now, you look at the numbers of Lamar Jackson. He's 39-14 as a starting quarterback. He's winning football games, right? He's got a completion percentage of 64.2, which is obviously already passing Eli and passing. Well, that's about Eli. See, I mean, it's just Eli. It's an Eli's day. It's an Eli day today. But the alarming thing, not the alarming, in a good way, And the reason why you should go long on a guy like Lamar Jackson, and I understand like he's banked this already. He's won an MVP, right? He still hasn't won that championship yet. He still hasn't gotten paid yet, which his mama is working on that deal right now, and that's going to get done before you know it. He wants guaranteed money, and in Mojo Market, you're well aware that career accolades such as an extension, a new blockbuster deal, it happened to Russ, it shoots you up a little
guaranteed
bit.
Money and
guaranteed money. That means you're there
once
for
you
good.
put the team in a position where they cannot affordably cut you, then you have value because you know that player is not.
It's
going
there
anywhere.
to stay. And right now he's got over 10,000 yards passing already. Right. The crazy part is he's about a quarterback draw or a QB option away from hitting 4,000 yards rushing. 4,000 yards rushing as a quarterback. Now, much like you said yesterday with Deebo Samuel, you're like, oh man, it's a lot of handoffs. You know, the trepidation is there. Is there any trepidation to the fact that Lamar Jackson, now we didn't do this, or we should have did this, and I wish we did do this, and I will do this after the show. I want to compare him to Michael Vick because that's the same kind of quarterback that you're seeing.
It's
a guy
hard.
that can launch it. Actually, Vick was a better passer.
I was thinking, well, that's
definitely.
The
guy could throw 100
arguable.
yards.
That is arguable. Lamar Jackson could throw the ball far as well. But it's hard. I was thinking about Mike Vick Lamar comparison, but because of the situation that Mike Vick experienced in the middle of his prime of his career, it kind of takes things away, and it's hard to dictate because there's 3 career years missing or 2 or 3 seasons out of there.
But then he came back and just barnstormer again. With Philadelphia, he was pretty darn good.
But if you add those 3 seasons of running quarterback play, that's a lot of violence that you're going to endure.
That's true.
And making it through those 3 years, the same reason why Josh Allen is paid right now and Lamar Jackson isn't. It's because Lamar Jackson's not as big of a guy, and he's not a downhill runner. He gets hit a little bit more. His propensity to take off is a lot higher than a Josh Allen's is. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, the market agrees because the future projections, they're a little bit lower for Lamar, and it's because of the injury risk. But that doesn't put me on the side of I'm not in on Lamar. I am definitely in on Lamar. This guy might win the MVP this season. So while you may have a situation where Josh Allen plays deep into 10, 15 more years, which is very likely in the way that NFL is set up right now. If you get 7 or 8 good years out of Lamar Jackson right now, and then at the very least, his skills diminish a little bit, and he's at that point develops into a way better passer, which you've seen across
Donovan McNabb,
Randall Cunningham. There's been guys along the way. Steve Young, great point. There's been tons of those guys. You don't really teach accuracy, but I don't think Lamar has an accuracy issue per se. I think that he just gets a little happy feet sometimes, and he's not looking downfield. He's looking at the blitz because he wants to take off. But I'm not a scout. I love Lamar. I'm all in on Lamar. I'm all in on Josh Allen. But the career arcs of the quarterbacks, don't get too excited because you see the Big Ben played 20 years.
Yeah.
He's just eclipsed the $100 mark. You could see the career arcs are a little bit different now because you have the Staffords and the Russes that are approaching that mark, but just because you're close doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get there. Once you get that high, it's harder to increase that value that much more. So you start bleeding away. And a bad game puts you right below, as we've seen.
And I think personally, like there's also data there, game by game data that you can look up to, and it's like I'm thinking to myself, all right, Eli Manning, he played when they weren't winning Super Bowls. He played on a very bad franchise. Like that team couldn't do anything for him. When it comes to Big Ben, he always played on winning teams. Mike Tomlin never lost.
Bro, I was looking at Big Ben's wins, man.
Yeah, no, he's 165 and 81, bro.
81
so it's a
losses
2-1
over like 19 seasons. That's really, really good.
Yeah, so that
really
means
good.
In reality, he's also getting playoff experience because when the Giants didn't win the Super Bowl, they weren't making the playoffs either. You know what I'm saying? So those extra games in the playoffs help you dramatically when it comes to the Mojo Market. And Big Ben cashed in on that, and that's why he ended in the 100 Club. Now, when you look at Baker, Josh, and Lamar, to me, I think forever Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson will be linked to playing on playoff teams, right? There's never going to be a point where you're like, wow, the Ravens just stink, or the Bills are just terrible. Like the Bills are a couple bad games away from winning the Super Bowl.
The Ravens missed, which is crazy.
Yeah, but he was hurt.
It was the injuries.
Yeah, he was hurt all year almost.
Injury-riddled season.
Yeah, so I'm looking at those guys especially when Josh Allen's already got paid, but like when Lamar gets paid in that long-term contract, you're looking at these guys like they're lifers there. And as long as the Bills and the Ravens do what they do front office wise, like they're always going to be competitive. And that's why investing in these quarterbacks will always be good because they're going to keep surrounding their team with talent. And that's going to make them better. So, going to make them better. But we can't talk quarterbacks without talking some RBs. We got some running backs in the retro Boomin area, and we want to talk about some retro running backs. Now, you're looking at your screen and you're like, oh, I get it. Adrian Peterson. And oh, yeah, I get it. That's Frank Gore. What the heck is Brian Westbrook doing there? Look at the career numbers real quick, folks. Now, when you bring this up, Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore are literally neck and neck, right? And they played a ton of games. Adrian Peterson played 184 games, which you're like, oh, that's a lot. And then Frank Gore's like, hold my beer. I got 241 games under my belt and over 16,000 yards. So, like, the longevity of those guys definitely played a factor. And again, the rushing yards and rushing attempts are just, I'm all about opportunity when it comes to Mojo Market. But then you look at a Brian Westbrook, Gooch. Why is Brian Westbrook even in this conversation? What made you talk? We had this lengthy conversation. Like, let's find this guy. And I'm like, why?
Yeah, this has been something that since the inception of the Mojo Market, I've been kind of dissecting how to play running backs because, you know, I feel like there's an obligation, A, to figure it out because that's what I'm doing here. And B, I like a lot of these players and I want to identify which ones I could actually invest in because I'm here to have fun and I'm here to make money and I want to make the running backs work for myself. I'm a big guy into quarterbacks and receivers because I think the careers just are a little bit safer. But when I'm looking at the running backs and I bring these three guys to the equation because there's a couple different paths to necessarily the same end game. And I say this with a little bit of, you have to understand there's a grain of salt here. But Adrian Peterson, he took the league by storm, fairly high draft pick. I think he was picked 8th overall by Minnesota. And he got to the point that he got to, you could see that they're neck and neck with Frank Gore. Frank Gore played 39 million years, and he's about 15 cents lower than Adrian Peterson. But Frank Gore was a second-round pick. So they got to that point at the very different ways. You know, Adrian Peterson, he did compile a little bit towards the end. But
he's
the
played for like 15
draft
teams
pick, so he had a higher entry value. And then Frank Gore, you know, not as high of a draft pick, but he played a little bit longer, more of a compiler. You're not going to find these types of players often, right? You're just simply not going to find them. But the Brian Westbrook comparison, I feel like it's a good one because if you look where Brian Westbrook started, it was probably as a third-round pick. I believe he was a third-round pick. You could compare that to a Brian Robinson right now, who is also a third-round pick, which I want to talk about him in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But they're valued at around $5. If you look at an Adrian Peterson, I'm sure he was valued, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm just basing it off of what I see other running backs that have entered the league.
As a first-round pick.
As a first-round pick, or the first pick. Like, look at a Breece Hall, for example. I would imagine Adrian Peterson had a higher value entry point than a Breece Hall did because he was a clear better prospect.
Right.
Breece Hall's in the 10 range. 11 range. Now, you ask, like, does that really matter, like, which one's more expensive? And I honestly say no. I think when we're talking about market value, it almost skews it for people because I'll buy 3 shares of Brian Robinson rather than buying 3 shares of, or 1 share of a guy that's worth $15. And the percentage it goes up is all you're really looking at. So Brian Westbrook earned very, very similarly to an Adrian Peterson and a Frank Gore throughout their careers because of the way he got in, and it took him a little bit, but then he entered a starting role because he proved value in his rookie deal, got a second deal with his team, and then inherited the starting back. There's a lot of guys that I could identify right now in the league that are in a very similar position.
Do tell.
So
I'm
looking for guys that do not come into the league with an opportunity to start right out of the gate. They have to earn it a little bit. I'm looking for guys that could catch the ball. I'm looking for guys that could pass block because that sustains a long career in the NFL. If you can't run between the tackles, they're going to find a role for you on third down if you could pick up a blitz and you could run a route. There's a lot of those guys in the league. They're being drafted specifically for that. Excuse me. I look at the career lifespan of a running back, and the reason why I get very hesitant is because it's by far the lowest, under 3 seasons. Receiver surprisingly comes in at 2. But I think that's a little bit skewed because a lot of receivers get opportunities. Mm-hmm. Like they kick the tires on a ton of guys that just don't make it. So that brings the number down a little bit. There's a lot less running backs getting an opportunity.
Yeah, you can carry 9 receivers when you start a season.
Yeah, when they do get the opportunity, it usually doesn't last long. So the guys like and I'm going to identify a couple guys without some context, and then I'll break it down a little bit. But I mentioned Brian Robinson.
He's
I feel
like right there.
In a week, he's
right
going to be
there,
coming
yeah.
back. And I feel Brian Robinson, he had a very decent college career where he played 4 years at Alabama, but didn't get a lot of mileage until his senior year. And I think that plays well for a future NFL running back. Brian Robinson is definitely on my buy list.
Go long, multipliers, all sorts of stuff. Go.
Michael Carter, I've talked about him a little bit. He's basically exactly the guy I'm talking about. 4th round pick, low expectations market-wise. They definitely have a role for him in the offense. He's been involved already both seasons. And because they did not believe in him as an every down back, that's going to make his career a little bit longer. Breece Hall is going to be the guy now, right? But Michael Carter is going to have plenty of opportunity. Kenneth Gainwell is another one. You know, Kenneth Gainwell was a 5th round pick, and he's got standalone value in fantasy. As early as last season, Kenneth Gainwell was playing well. I think Kenneth Gainwell has an opportunity to be maybe an Aaron Jones type. 5th round pick.
Wow.
A couple seasons of seasoning.
That's
and then
bold.
all of a sudden
That's
free.
bold, no?
Let's start the free Kenneth Gainwell campaign because
All right,
that guy
let's do
can
it.
move. Isaiah Spiller, great situation. He's coming into the league on a young, high-powered offense.
And Eckler just seems not to stay on the field as much as you'd like him to. So.
And because of the career arc of a running back where they go 2 years, 3 years, Eckler's had mileage. He's had some injuries. Isaiah Spiller, he could be the guy there. Dontrell Hilliard, undrafted, has shown splashes of making it happen in the pass-catching game in week 1 against the Giants. He had a great first half. I think that he has some potential because he's almost nothing. It's almost like there's really no risk there. And then Isaiah Pacheco from Kansas City.
Love it. Rutgers.
We've
Are
seen
you?
him. Are you? We've seen him make a splash. He's had some good blitz pickups, which in the NFL, I just said, that will keep you in the league. If you were in the league, eventually you will get your opportunities. I think this kid could play, and it's very cheap. The potential for him to be a $15 back at one point, it could be that way. It could very well be that way. So
that's interesting.
That's how I'm going to play the running backs. I think you guys, maybe if you have any questions, you could reach out and I'll give you a little more insight. But I'm going to keep on doing deep dives into this. But these are the guys that I'm identifying more so than the blue chip guys because there's risk there because a lot of their value right now is banked on future value. If that guy gets injured, that future value goes away and it's all banked value. I'm looking for guys that have very, very low market projections that I believe in. And that's where I'm going with running backs.
So as much as this is all analytically driven in the NFL and pretty much all sports across the board, you're finally going with your gut. you're finally going with a little bit of, I think that the opportunity will seize itself eventually.
Well, I'm going with my gut, but these guys all have a role.
Correct.
Almost already.
Yes.
I question Pacheco's role a little bit because he had one good game and then he
But
had
there's like a lot. There's like there's a lot of guys
Kansas
over
City
there.
operates, any given moment he could be the guy
Right.
inserted in there. We talked about Tyler Algier a couple weeks back, the last 2 weeks on both shows, and Tyler Algier now inserted himself into a really nice situation for a couple weeks. So
Yeah.
these guys are all going to get an opportunity. There's no question about it. And I believe that even if their opportunity as a lead back fails, they have value in this league, and they're going to all be here for a little bit, barring catastrophic injury. So,
Oof,
yeah,
I feel like every show.
and I want
we always say catastrophic.
And I want to make a
injury.
point though, because it is a feeling, but I spent a lot of
The
time.
data's there,
I
right.
spent a lot of time coming up with this feeling, looking at these running backs. So yeah,
Right. It's not a feeling, Dave. My eyes are crossed because I keep looking at this large spreadsheet of all the data and stuff, and people are interested in our nuggets. So that's
just
cool.
Food for thought. Brian Robinson, in terms of percentages, he went up almost the same amount as an Adrian Peterson in their
So now this is the time. And look, I tell you guys this all the time. Just don't sleep on it. Just don't, because you're gonna miss that ship when it goes, and you're like,
I don't know for a fact, but I think that based on what I was looking at, I think Brian Robinson went up about 200, maybe a little 200+% in his career.
already.
Well, not Brian Robinson, Brian Westbrook. I
Oh
apologize.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
we
so-
saw that yesterday.
So guys like that, 200%. How many percent points do you think AP went up if he entered the league at 10? Less.
Right.
So the
Right.
expectations matter. That's where I'm going with running back.
Brian Robinson, just so you know, is sitting there at less than $6.
And he's a top mover right now. He's 7% because they just said he's back.
They're well aware that it's happening. So Brian Robinson is the guy right now because look, just so everybody's aware, it's all about opportunity. And before the season started, before he had his mishap with the car thing, right? He was slated to beat RB1, and Antonio Gibson was like, "Yeah, you're
And
good.
you know
Go
what?
return
And-
kicks."
and-
What?
And I have something that I would like to actually insert into this conversation because Antonio Gibson may actually find his way onto the list that I was just talking about in lieu of Brian Robinson being the lead guy.
So he becomes a Westbrook by default?
By default. One thing that Antonio Gibson has proven is that he is not the every down back.
Mm-hmm.
And he has proven that he's tough and he can stay in the league, but he's also a wide receiver in college, so he might be the pass catcher down the line.
Sure,
and
very
Brian
true.
Robinson takes over as the lead back.
And he still's got some burst. All right. So before we get out of here, we have a project. We have a mission, okay? We've come up with this. Now, look, we're all about the quarterbacks. We're all about the running backs. And, of course, you got to show love to the receivers. Now, there are a million receivers out there. We've been talking about them for 2.5 weeks now. And the Jamar Chases of the world and the Justin Jeffersons are the safest ones you can invest in right now. Multipliers galore. Get paid every week as those guys climb, right? But there's a conversation to be had to find a specific receiver with longevity. And I'm not just talking about longevity. Career accolades, longevity, yards, compiling stats.
And there's one underlying fact that you're missing.
I'm missing it. Go ahead.
He's a 7th round pick.
7th round pick. So we're on the hunt to find the 2022 version of our good friend, Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman obviously plays with the Patriots his entire career. What? He's not Wes Welker. Like Edelman was there forever. Welker was all over the place. But they compared him to Wes Welker as soon as he came into the league. But you got Julian Edelman now playing with one team. The compiling of the numbers. Now, look, they're not as gaudy as you would think, right? 137 games played in that time span. He did miss some time. He wasn't, the Iron Man that some people are. 620 receptions on 941 targets. The guy was fed a lot because it was Tom Brady. He fell in love with the guy. He kept throwing them the ball at all times. Just over 6,800 yards. The best part is he ended his career on 11 yards per reception. So the dude, like, even if it was a 4-yard slant, the guy was a yak machine. And the best part about this guy is that he just lasted so long. So he ended his career, Chris, with a $16.72 bank value. And you're thinking to yourself, well, what? How? He played so long, right? It took him a long time to get going. And once you got going, he was finding himself banking $2-3 a year just based off his performance. And then by the end of it, there it is. So, Chris, who's the next Julian Edelman?
I have no idea.
That's
Dave.
what we're looking for.
This is a tough one, but I'm working on it. And as I'm looking through, I come up with a couple names that I keep talking about. But I think those are the guys that, as we look through Mojo Market, the next Julian Edelman may not even have a profile because they're so under the radar, because that's how Julian Edelman was. It's very rare where you're going to see a guy that takes the league in the 7th round, and then it takes a couple seasons for him to get going, but then he turns out a potential Hall of Fame career. I don't think Julian Edelman's a Hall of Famer, but there's some people out there that really do, and there's an argument based on the 7th round aspect of it because he's the best 7th round pick by far.
Once upon a time, there was a 6th round draft pick. Might have heard of him, Tom Brady. Something happened.
Yeah.
He did all right. So
it's
happens.
like identifying who the next Julian Edelman is. I don't know. 7th round receivers, they don't really last long in the NFL, if at all. So search the practice squads for some talent, and then maybe you'll find your Julian Edelman. But as I'm looking about guys that entered the league with low expectations, it's hard for me to identify a 7th rounder. But we talked about Romeo Doubs, right?
Yeah.
How often is it that a guy that's in the 4th round of his rookie season, he's in game 3 right now. They just completed game 3. He had 8 catches in game 2, caught all 8 of his targets, and then Aaron Rodgers looked his way on what would have been a game-winning touchdown pass in the 4th quarter in crunch time. So it's clear to me that Romeo Doubs is involved. He's heavily involved, and as he gains Aaron Rodgers' trust, which he did a good job of that in week 2, maybe took some of that back in week 3 with the drop. But Romeo Doubs is involved. They got a really good coach. I'm not sure how long Aaron Rodgers is going to last, but they have a 1st-round pick in Jordan Love waiting in the wings.
I know you're hopefully optimistic.
By Jordan Love, by the way. Just saying. They have a 1st-round pick waiting in the wings in Jordan Love. I think the Packers...
Packer quarterbacks get love. Did you see the movement of Walford the other night?
I did. I did.
That happens.
I don't want Jordan Love to get any love just yet. But, down the line, I don't mind it. But yeah, Romeo Doubs is the guy that I'm identifying. I feel like he's the best buy at the receiver position right now because I know for a fact, this is me
facts,
talking,
folks,
that Romeo Doubs is going to be heavily involved this season. Going forward, there's no ceiling for him just yet because
you're right.
He's a talented guy and there's a very, very low value in terms of entering the league. So Romeo Doubs,
in this regard,
Devin Duvernay.
well, we all know to diversify
I'm
with
on
Devin.
Duvernay.
100%. I'm just looking at this 2-year experience sign, 2021. I'm looking at Anthony Schwartz. Now, I know this is a name you're like, what? The only reason why I know who Anthony Schwartz is
It's a good one.
is because I listened to the Mojo Spaces last night, and they were talking Cleveland Browns and depth. So apparently now Anthony Schwartz is just there for the cardio. Like he's literally, that's what they said. I kind of laughed. I had to like, I had playing in my car. I was like,
get involved. I got an Anthony Schwartz zebra.
Yeah,
the
do
other
you?
day. Yeah.
Oh, all right, nice. But I'm saying like they're thinking that the opportunities aren't there anymore for Anthony Schwartz, but they are there for one David Bell. So if you want to talk about David Bell, you can go talk about David Bell. Anyway, the receiving room on every single team is so deep. So the mission for us is to find the guy that was either drafted real late, 6th, 7th round, or undrafted overall. Dobbs was drafted when?
4th round.
Okay, so that's the latest we'll go right now, but we will find the next
like,
Julian Edelman.
I like Josh Palmer.
I like him
for
too.
The Chargers.
I like him too.
Third
And with that
round
offense, that guy distributes.
Keenan Allen's. I wouldn't say he's on his way
That
out.
guy's Herbert.
But I don't know how many more.
Well, they're both making $20 million too, so they have to.
So the contract
Yeah,
situation
that's
is
a
not
big
great there.
situation over there.
I know Mike Williams will be the one once Keenan Allen's gone, but Justin Herbert and Palmer came into the league together.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 3rd round pick, so he has a little bit of pedigree. It's not a 7th rounder, but look for that connection down the line. I think Josh Palmer has value late in his career as well.
We
Maybe
shall
not
see.
late, but next year.
We shall see. This one was fun, man. Listen, I'm a historian when it comes to football. I like looking into all the old the statistics, the comparisons to the older players. And like I said, the first one I was like, I got to see what Romo was worth. How about now in this year, in 2009, when he first got his first start? You know, it's a lot of data to compile and take in, but it's a fun time, man. And it gives you the idea of where your favorite players right now might wind up if they have the same career trajectory, as your former favorite players. Speaking of one of my former favorite players, yesterday, as we close, the announcement of the retirement of the BOAT. Blake Bortles announced his retirement yesterday. Very, very upset and this disappointing career journeyman.
Former emergency quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. Nothing but love for the BOAT, baby.
I mean,
the greatest BOAT of all time. Greatest Blake of all time.
That's what it is, yeah. All right, so that'll do it for today here on a Wednesday. For Dave Sturchio, Chris Gueci from Chop Studios, this has been another episode of the Mojo Market Report. We're back tomorrow. Guess what, guys? It's week 5. Week 5. We are entering the and we're past the first quarter mark.
We're entering Brian Robinson's season.
That is a fact. See you guys tomorrow. Not wrong.